The gymnasium smelled like recycled air and overconfidence. I stood at the edge of the training floor, my secondary respiratory slits flaring as I watched the latest batch of cadets file in for their mandatory dueling certification. 17 species represented, 42 students total, and one human who was about to make my life exponentially more complicated. Her name was Kira Valdez, and she was carrying something that absolutely, positively, did not belong in a standard Federation combat course. Instructor Threll, my teaching assistant, a nervous Quilnari named Voss, tapped my shoulder membrane with one of his 6 manipulator appendages. Is that an actual metal weapon? I followed his gaze to where the human girl stood, casually leaning against a support pillar like she owned the place. In her hands, wrapped in what appeared to be aged leather, was a blade. Not a training saber, not a regulation dueling stick. An honest-to-stars sword. Yes, Voss. Yes, it is. But the regulations clearly state. I am aware of what the regulations state. I cut him off, already feeling the beginnings of a migraine forming behind my ocular ridge. I am also aware that humans have a documented tendency to interpret rules as friendly suggestions rather than absolute mandates. Kira noticed me staring. She had the audacity to grin, wide, showing all those disturbing bone protrusions they called teeth. I approached her with the kind of caution one might use when addressing a malfunctioning plasma core. Cadet Valdez. Instructor Threll. She straightened up, though her posture remained infuriatingly relaxed. Beautiful morning for some sanctioned violence, wouldn't you say? Several nearby students, a cluster of Matharian twins and a Grolix exchange student, shifted nervously. Humans had that effect. They smiled when they talked about violence. It was unsettling. The morning is adequate, I replied, gesturing to the wrapped object in her grip. However, I notice you are not carrying standard equipment. Care to explain? She glanced down at the sword like she'd forgotten it was there. Oh, this? This is grandmother's kiss. Well, technically, it belonged to my uncle, but he called it that because my grandmother gave it to him right before she passed, and apparently she was a terrifying woman who kissed people on the forehead before utterly destroying them in legal negotiations, so the name kind of stuck. You know how family heirlooms get weird names? And cadet. Right. Sorry. Tangent. Anyway, I brought my uncle's sword. I can see that. The question is why. She unwrapped it partially, revealing a cross guard that had to be at least 300 years old by human reckoning. The blade itself, what I could see of it, was darkened steel with an edge that looked sharp enough to split hydrogen atoms. Because, Kira said, her tone shifting from cheerful to something almost dangerous, the course catalog said we could use any weapon we were proficient with, provided it met safety standards and historical significance criteria. This blade has been in my family for 4 generations. My uncle taught me to use it when I was 8. And before you ask, yes, I have the documentation. She produced a data chip from her jacket pocket and handed it to me. I wanted to argue. I wanted to cite a dozen different protocols. Instead, I took the chip and inserted it into my wrist terminal. The documentation was thorough. Annoyingly thorough. Weapons certification from 3 different masters. Historical provenance dating back to something called the Montreal Uprising of 2089. Safety modifications including a dulled edge for training purposes and a weight balance certification. She'd done her homework. This is highly irregular, I muttered. Irregular is kind of my species' whole thing, Kira replied. We're the folks who brought coffee to the galactic community. You're welcome for that, by the way. Behind me, I heard Voss make a small sound of distress. He was addicted to coffee. We all were. Curse the humans for that particular contribution. Fine, I said, surprising myself. But you will demonstrate full control before you're cleared for sparring. Agreed? Absolutely. Her grin returned. When do we start? I should have said no. I should have filed an exception report and made her use a standard saber like everyone else. But there was something in her eyes, a kind of focused intensity that reminded me why humans had become such effective members of the Federation military despite only joining 12 years ago. They didn't just follow rules. They understood why the rules existed, and sometimes they understood that the rules needed challenging. Line up with the others, I instructed. We'll begin with basic forms. The class assembled in the standard grid pattern, each student standing at arm's length from their neighbors. Kira took her position near the back, unwrapping grandmother's kiss completely. The blade gleamed under the gymnasium lights, and I noticed several students edging away from her. Smart students. Today's session focuses on defensive postures and counterattack sequences, I announced, projecting my voice across the training floor. You will be evaluated on precision, control, and adaptability. Pair up with the partner assigned on your data screens. There was the usual shuffling as students checked their assignments and moved into position. Kira's partner turned out to be a Vexorian named Cleth, a towering creature with chitinous armor and 4 arms, each capable of wielding a weapon independently. Cleth took one look at the human and her ancient sword and let out a clicking laugh that translated through everyone's neural implants as, "This should be entertaining." "Something funny?" Kira asked, tilting her head. "Humans are small," Cleth replied, activating all 4 of his training sabers. They hummed to life, with the characteristic blue glow of energy-dampened blades. "You bring old metal. I have 4 weapons. You have 1. Simple mathematics." Kira's smile didn't waver. "I'm more of a history person. Begin when ready," I called out, moving to observe from a better angle. The other pairs started their exercises, the gymnasium filling with the clash and hum of training weapons. But my attention stayed fixed on Kira and Cleth. The Vexorian moved first, using his reach advantage to probe with quick jabs from his upper arms, while his lower arms held defensive positions. It was textbook multiple-limb combat doctrine. Kira didn't move. "Are you going to defend yourself?" Cleth asked, confusion creeping into his translated voice. "Just getting a read on your rhythm," she said casually. "Uncle Marcus always said to watch for 3 beats before committing. You telegraph with your upper left shoulder plate. It shifts 0.03 seconds before you thrust." Cleth's eyes narrowed. "All 6 of them? Impossible. That movement is involuntary. Doesn't mean it's unnoticeable." Then Kira moved, and I finally understood why she'd brought that particular weapon. She flowed. There was no other word for it. The sword became an extension of her arm as she slipped inside Cleth's reach, deflecting 2 strikes with a single circular parry that sent both training sabers wide. Her blade, real metal against energy constructs, sang through the air with a sound that made everyone nearby pause to look. Cleth recovered quickly. I had to give him credit for that. He pressed the attack with all 4 arms, creating a storm of glowing blue that should have overwhelmed any single opponent. Should have. Kira's blade wove through the assault like water, finding gaps in stone. She wasn't faster than Cleth. She didn't need to be. Every movement was economical, precise, positioned exactly where it needed to be to redirect rather than block. The old sword's weight and balance, clearly familiar to her after years of practice, allowed her to generate momentum with minimal effort. "You're cheating," Cleth protested, backing up a step. "I'm using physics," Kira corrected. "Your sabers are light. Energy constructs usually are. My blade has mass. When your attack meets my defense, you have to compensate for the resistance. I don't. Makes you work harder." She punctuated this explanation by stepping forward and tapping Cleth's chest plate with the flat of her blade. Lightly, almost playfully. "First touch," she announced. That would have been a killing blow with a live edge. The gymnasium had gone quiet. Every other pair had stopped their exercises to watch. Cleth's mandibles clicked in what I recognized as frustrated respect. "Again," he demanded. "That was luck." "Sure," Kira agreed, resetting to her starting position. Let's call it that. They went again. And again. Each time, Kira found the openings. She took touches at a ratio that shouldn't have been possible given the disparity in limbs and reach. By the sixth round, Cleth was breathing hard, his carapace slick with exertion. Kira looked like she'd barely warmed up. How? The Vexorian finally asked, lowering his sabers. How are you doing this? She rested grandmother's kiss on her shoulder, that maddening smile back in place. My uncle fought in the border wars. Before humanity joined the Federation, he learned from people who fought with these blades when they were the only weapons available. There's a phrase he used to say, the weapon doesn't make the warrior, but understanding your weapon makes you better than warriors who don't. Old wisdom, Cleth said, almost reverent. Very old, Kira agreed, and still very effective. Back to your exercises. This isn't entertainment hour. The students scrambled to resume their pairs, though I noticed many of them kept glancing toward Kira. Voss appeared at my side again, his translator chip working, overtime to convey his anxiety. Instructor, this is going to create problems. If word spreads that a human with an antique weapon defeated a Vexorian multiple arms specialist, then other students will take their training more seriously. I interrupted. That's not a problem, Voss. That's an opportunity. But the regulations were written by people who had never seen a human fight with ancestral weapons, I said quietly. We adapt or we stagnate. The girl followed the rules. She brought documentation. She demonstrated superior skill. What exactly would you have me do? Voss had no answer for that. I watched Kira bow respectfully to Cleth, some human custom I didn't fully understand, and then move to help him adjust his stance for better defense against mass-based weapons. She was teaching him. In the middle of a graded exercise, she was teaching her opponent how to fight her more effectively. Absolutely insane. Absolutely human. Cadet Valdez, I called out. She looked up. Yes, instructor? After class. My office. We need to discuss your teaching methods? Am I in trouble? I considered that. I honestly don't know yet. Her laugh carried across the gymnasium, bright and unapologetic. Several students flinched at the sound. The rest of the session proceeded with fewer incidents, though I noticed the overall quality of fighting had improved. Students were watching Kira's footwork, studying how she used minimal movement for maximum effect. Even species with significant physical advantages were beginning to question their assumptions about combat. When the final bell chimed, signaling the end of class, most students filed out quickly. Kira remained behind, carefully rewrapping grandmother's kiss in its leather covering. She handled it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. Maybe, for humans, weapons were religious artifacts. They certainly treated them that way. Quite the show you put on, I said, approaching her. Wasn't trying to show off, she replied, not looking up from her work. Cleth needed to understand that multiple weapons don't guarantee victory. Better he learns that here than in actual combat, where the lesson might be fatal. And that's why you were teaching him? In the middle of an evaluation? The evaluation is pass-fail based on demonstrating competence, right? I demonstrated competence. After that, seemed rude not to help. She finished wrapping the sword and stood. My uncle always said the best warriors make everyone around them better. Felt like the right thing to do. I studied her for a long moment. Human faces were notoriously difficult to read if you didn't have experience with their species, but I thought I detected genuine sincerity behind those eyes. You realize other students will want to challenge you now, I said, especially after today's display. Good, Kira said simply. I could use the practice. Practice. I let out a breath that was almost a laugh. You defeated a Vexorian 6 consecutive times, and you call it practice. Instructor Threll. With respect, if I stop thinking of myself as someone who needs practice, I stop improving. The moment you think you're good enough is the moment you start getting worse. She adjusted the sword's position on her shoulder. Uncle Marcus taught me that too. Usually right before handing me my ass in the training ring. Your uncle sounds like he was a wise human. Is a wise human? Kira corrected. He's retired now, runs a security consulting firm on New Terra, but he still sends me training routines and critiques my form over video calls. Drives me crazy, but I wouldn't have it any other way. The gymnasium was empty now, except for the two of us. In the silence, I made a decision. I'm adding you to the Advanced Combat Seminar, I said. It meets twice a week, evening sessions, limited enrollment. Students are selected based on demonstrated skill and potential for instructional contribution. Kira's eyes widened slightly. Seriously? Do I seem like I joke about academic assignments? Fair point. Yes, absolutely. I'd be honored. Don't be honored yet, I warned. The students in that seminar include 3 planetary champions, a former military contractor, and one individual who once fought off a boarding party single-handedly with nothing but a maintenance tool and spite. You'll be the youngest student by 4 years. Her grin was back, sharp and eager. When do I start? Tomorrow, 1800 hours. Bring grandmother's kiss. You're going to need it. She nodded, already heading for the exit. At the door, she paused and looked back. Thank you, instructor, for giving me a chance. Thank your uncle for teaching you well, I replied. And cadet? Yes? Try not to embarrass the planetary champions too badly. They have fragile egos. Her laugh echoed through the empty gymnasium long after she left. Voss emerged from the equipment room, his ocular stalks drooping with exhaustion. We're going to regret this, aren't we? Almost certainly, I agreed, but it should be entertaining to watch. Outside, through the gymnasium's transparent panels, I could see Kira walking across the campus quad, still carrying that ancient blade like it weighed nothing at all. Other students gave her a wide berth, already spreading stories about the human who brought a sword to a saber fight. Tomorrow's seminar was going to be very interesting indeed. The Advanced Combat Seminar met in a different facility altogether. Where the standard gymnasium had been bright and sterile, this place felt purposefully hostile. Dim lighting, reinforced walls scarred from years of high-intensity combat, and a faint metallic tang in the air that suggested numerous close calls with actual injury. Perfect. I arrived early, as always, and found 3 students already present. Tarak Ven, a Korathi warrior who'd won the planetary championships in his home system for 6 consecutive years before, enrolling here. Beside him stood Liss, a Drellian whose species had perfected ambush tactics over millennia of evolutionary pressure. And leaning against the far wall, looking bored, was Grix Malorian, the former military contractor I'd mentioned to Kira. All 3 looked up when I entered. Instructor, Tarak acknowledged with a nod. His species didn't bow, didn't show deference through posture. Respect came through action and tone. We heard rumors about a new addition to the group. Rumors travel fast. When a first-year cadet defeats Cleth 6 times using pre-Federation technology, people notice, Liss said, her vocal harmonics carrying amusement. Is it true she used an actual forged blade? You'll see for yourself shortly. Grix pushed off from the wall, his massive frame making the movement seem almost lazy. Please tell me you're not bringing in some pampered rich kid playing with Grandpa's antiques. I have actual skills to refine, not time to waste on ceremonial nonsense. Before I could respond, the door hissed open again. Kira walked in carrying grandmother's kiss, now secured in a proper scabbard across her back. She'd changed from her standard academy uniform into something more practical for extended combat sessions. Flexible armor weave, reinforced joints, and boots designed for rapid footwork. Her hair was tied back severely, all business. She surveyed the room with the same calm assessment I'd seen in the gymnasium, taking in each occupant before her gaze settled on me. Reporting as ordered, Instructor Threll. Welcome to Advanced Combat Theory and Application, I said formally. These are your fellow students. Introduce yourselves. Tarak stepped forward first, offering the traditional Korathi greeting, one fist over his primary heart. Tarak Ven, 6-time planetary champion. My specialty is overwhelming force and endurance fighting. Kira Valdez, human. My specialty is apparently making people nervous. She returned the gesture awkwardly, but with clear effort to get it right. Liz rippled her sensory fronds in what passed for a smile among her kind. Liz, no family name. My species doesn't use them. I focus on misdirection and exploiting environmental advantages. Creative approach, Kira said approvingly. I like it. Then Grix spoke, not bothering to move from his position. Grix Malorian. I've actually killed people in combat, not just played at it in training rings. My specialty is surviving situations where everyone else dies. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kira didn't flinch. Grix Malorian. Interesting. I read about you during prep research. Former contractor for the Helion Syndicate, discharged after the Station 7 incident when you refused orders to fire on civilian transports. Lost your pension and your reputation, defending people who couldn't fight back. She paused. Your specialty isn't surviving. It's knowing what's worth surviving for. Dead silence. Grix stared at her, something unreadable crossing his scarred features. Then, slowly, he straightened and offered a fractional nod. Maybe you're not entirely useless. High praise, Kira replied dryly. I'll try not to let it go to my head. I cleared my throat, reclaiming control of the room. Now that introductions are complete, let's discuss today's objective. Advanced combat isn't about perfecting techniques in isolation. It's about adaptation under pressure, strategic thinking when adrenaline compromises judgment, and understanding that every opponent teaches you something if you're willing to learn. Sounds philosophical, Tarak commented. Sounds practical, Kira countered. Theory without application is just poetry. She's not wrong, Liz agreed. I activated the room's central projection system. A holographic arena materialized, showing various terrain types and obstacle configurations. Today's exercise involves rotating partnerships. Each pair will engage in 3-minute combat scenarios, with randomized environmental conditions. Victory conditions vary: disarmament, incapacitation, or tactical objective completion. Who pairs with who? Grix asked. Randomized selection keeps you from developing predictable strategies, I explained. But for the first rotation, I've made specific assignments. Kira, you're with Grix. Her eyebrows rose fractionally. Starting with the terrifying veteran. Bold choice. You wanted practice, I reminded her. Grix is arguably the most dangerous fighter in this room when motivated. Consider this your entrance examination. Grix cracked his knuckles, a sound like rocks grinding together. Makes the paperwork messy. I'll do my best, Kira said, moving to the arena space and drawing grandmother's kiss. The blade whispered free of its scabbard, with a sound that carried weight, history, and something that might have been anticipation. Grix selected 2 short-handled axes from the weapons rack, twirling them experimentally. His species preferred paired weapons, using their superior upper body strength to generate devastating cross-strikes. Rules are simple, I announced. No lethal targeting, no permanent damage, no property destruction beyond acceptable parameters. Fight until I call the stop, or one combatant yields. Understood? Both fighters acknowledged. Environmental setting: urban ruins, limited visibility, multiple elevation changes. Begin in 3, 2, 1. The holographic projectors engaged, transforming the training space into a collapsed cityscape. Broken walls materialized as hard light constructs, rubble scattered across uneven ground, and simulated dust reduced visibility to roughly 15 meters. Both fighters vanished into the manufactured chaos immediately. Tarak moved beside me, watching with professional interest. The humans smart to use the environment. Grix has reach and strength advantages in open combat. Documented tendency toward aggressive tactics that logic suggests they should avoid. She's not hiding, I said, pointing to a secondary display showing thermal signatures. She's positioning. On screen, Kira had scaled a partial wall, using the elevation to scan for Grix's movement. The older fighter was advancing systematically, clearing each section before proceeding, exactly the way military doctrine suggested. Kira waited until he passed beneath her position, then dropped. But she didn't attack. She landed, rolled, and came up running in the opposite direction, her boots barely making sound on the simulated rubble. Interesting choice, Tarak observed. She had the perfect ambush opportunity. She's testing him, I realized, seeing how he responds to confirmed contact. Grix spun at the sound of her landing, saw her retreating form, and gave chase with frightening speed for someone his size. His thermal signature blazed brighter as his species' combat enhancements kicked in, flooding his system with natural stimulants that increased reaction time and strength. Kira led him through 2 turns, around collapsed support beams, and through a narrow corridor between holographic buildings. Then she stopped, turned, and raised Grandmother's Kiss into a high guard position. Grix closed the distance fast, axes already swinging in the brutal cross pattern his species favored. The clash, when their weapons met, was thunderous. Kira didn't try to match his strength. She angled her blade to redirect his left axe wide while sidestepping his right completely, a technique called deflection economy that required precise timing and nerves that wouldn't quit. She's reading his combinations, Liz said, her sensory fronds extended fully now. After just 2 exchanges, she's predicting his attack sequences. Humans excel at pattern recognition, I noted. It's one of their most dangerous traits in combat. Grix realized his combinations weren't landing and changed tactics, mixing feints with his actual strikes, using his offhand axe to probe while committing his dominant hand to the real attacks. Kira's response was immediate. She started talking. You favor your right side by approximately 60-40 ratio? Old injury, maybe? No? Wait. Your left shoulder sits slightly lower, probably structural rather than damage-based. Your species has that asymmetry naturally, doesn't affect your daily life, but creates a tell in combat because you unconsciously protect the weaker side. Shut up, Grix growled, pressing the attack harder. Also, you're breathing through your mouth. Means you're working harder than you want to admit. I'm not tired yet because I'm letting you exhaust yourself. Uncle Marcus called this the matador approach. You're the bull. I'm just staying out of your way until you're too tired to catch me. She punctuated this by ducking under a particularly vicious swing and tapping his ribs with the flat of her blade. Point 1, Grix roared, actually roared, and unleashed a combination that should have ended the fight. 10 strikes in 3 seconds, each capable of shattering bone if they connected. Kira wove through them like smoke, her blade singing its metallic song as it redirected rather than blocked, absorbed force through circular parries rather than meeting strength with strength. You're angry, she continued, not even breathing hard. Anger makes you predictable. I've trained with people who wanted to hurt me, people who wanted to prove points. But you? You're not trying to win. You're trying to make me afraid. She slipped inside his reach again, close enough that his axes were useless, and placed the tip of Grandmother's Kiss against his throat. Gently, barely touching. Point 2. And for the record, I grew up with an uncle who once made me spar for 6 hours straight because I forgot to clean my training equipment properly. I learned a long time ago that fear just wastes energy. Halt, I called. Match, concludes. Reset positions. The holographic environment faded, returning the room to its normal state. Both fighters stepped back, breathing hard now. Grix, More so than Kira. That was. Tarak searched for words. Unexpected. She talked during combat, Liz said, bewildered. That should have been a distraction. A weakness. Instead, she used it to disrupt his focus. Psychological warfare, I explained. Humans are remarkably adept at it. They can fight on physical and mental fronts simultaneously. Grix was staring at Kira with an expression I couldn't quite parse. Then, shockingly, he laughed. Deep and genuine. You're absolutely insufferable. I've been told that before, Kira admitted, sheathing her blade. Usually right before someone admits I'm right. The injury was 4 years ago. Shipboard accident during an extraction. You're correct that it healed asymmetrically. Grix set his axes down. And you're right about the anger. I was testing whether you'd panic under pressure. Failed test, then. No, Grix said slowly. Successful test. Different result than expected. You'll do well here, human. Kira. Call me Kira. Kira, then. I watched this exchange with growing understanding. The seminar wasn't just about refining technique. It was about building fighters who could function as units, who respected each other's capabilities while pushing each other to improve. Kira had just proven she belonged. Next rotation, I announced. Tarak and Liz, you're up. Kira, observe and provide analysis afterward. Grix, recovery protocols, then you'll brief her on common mistakes first rotation students make. The session continued for another 2 hours. Kira fought each of them, adapted to each of their styles, and lost exactly as many matches as she won. But every loss taught her something visible, tangible. She'd ask questions between rounds, genuine curiosity about techniques and approaches she hadn't encountered. By the end, even Tarak, who rarely showed enthusiasm for anything, was demonstrating his species' rapid strike combinations and explaining the theory behind their development. When the session finally concluded, the 4 students left together, already discussing the finer points of their matches and planning additional practice sessions outside official class time. Voss appeared from the observation room, his translator working overtime. That was remarkable. She integrated into the group within 1 session. Humans are social creatures, I said. Even their warriors function better in groups. It's why they adapted so quickly to Federation military structures. Will she continue using that sword? Would you want to be the person who tells her otherwise, after watching today? Voss considered that. Valid point. I powered down the training systems and began final documentation for the day's session. Kira's performance would be logged, analyzed, and likely flagged for administrative review. Non-standard equipment, exceptional performance, rapid integration into advanced coursework, all things that bureaucrats loved to question. Let them question. I'd seen what I needed to see. 3 days later, I received a communication request. Private channel, encrypted. I accepted it, and a holographic projection materialized, showing an older human male with gray-streaked hair and scars that told stories of harder times. Instructor Threll, I presume, he said. I'm Marcus Valdez, Kira's uncle. Mr. Valdez, this is unexpected. My niece mentioned you approved her equipment for advanced training. Wanted to thank you personally. That sword means a lot to our family. She's demonstrated remarkable skill with it. She better have. I spent 12 years teaching her how not to cut her own fingers off. He smiled, and I saw where Kira had inherited that particular expression. But I also wanted to give you some context. That blade was carried by her great-grandmother during the Montreal Uprising, later by her grandmother during the colonization wars, then by me during the border conflicts, now Kira. 4 generations of warriors. 4 generations of survivors, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. We don't fight because we love violence. We fight because sometimes fighting is the only thing standing between people we love and people who'd hurt them. Kira understands that. Might be why she's good at what she does. I nodded slowly. She fights with purpose. Exactly. And purpose makes warriors dangerous in ways pure skill never could. He paused. Treat her well, instructor. Push her hard. She can take it. But remember, she's still young, still learning who she is beyond the blade. I understand. Good. Also, she tells me you drink coffee. I'm sending you a care package of proper earth-grown beans. None of that synthetic crap the stations serve. That's not necessary. Consider it. Thanks for not being a bureaucratic idiot about the regulations. The projection began to fade. Keep her safe, instructor. But more importantly, help her become who she's meant to be. The connection terminated, leaving me alone with considerably more context than I'd possessed minutes earlier. A care package arrived 2 weeks later. The coffee was excellent. Kira continued attending advanced seminars, her presence transforming the dynamic from competitive to collaborative. Grix became something like a mentor, his harsh exterior hiding genuine respect for her adaptability. Tarak started studying historical human combat forms, fascinated by their efficiency. Liz incorporated elements of Kira's misdirection techniques into her own style. And Grandmother's Kiss continued to sing its metallic song through training sessions, a reminder that sometimes the oldest tools remained the most effective. 6 months into the program, during a live-fire exercise involving multiple species and complex objectives, Kira's unit encountered genuine danger. A training simulation malfunction created actual plasma discharge in a confined space, the kind of accident that could kill in seconds. She didn't hesitate. Drew the sword, used it to short-circuit the malfunctioning projector by jamming it into the power coupling. Then, organized evacuation while systems rebooted. 3 students suffered minor burns. 0 fatalities. The inquiry board wanted to know why she'd risked a family heirloom to save equipment. Her answer was simple. Equipment can be replaced. People can't. The sword did its job. That's all that matters. They didn't understand. But I did. Marcus had been right. Purpose made warriors dangerous. But purpose also made them heroes when situations demanded heroism over protocol. Kira Valdez graduated top of her class 18 months later. She went on to serve in the Federation Rapid Response Division, carrying Grandmother's Kiss into conflicts where ancient steel proved as effective as modern energy weapons. Last I heard, she'd been promoted to tactical instructor, teaching new recruits the same lessons she'd learned in my seminar. That adaptation mattered more than tradition, that understanding your tools mattered more than having the newest technology, and that talking during combat while simultaneously kicking someone's ass was absolutely, definitively, a valid tactical approach. Humans remained strange, unpredictable, and mildly terrifying, but I wouldn't have it any other way.